our communities, and then we'll dig a little bit into news stories, look at some headlines. I'll give you some tips on what to be on the lookout for when you're going through stories in terms of navigating disinformation. Some publications and outlets that I recommend, and then along the way, just resources and tips. Hopefully we will have time for a Q&A. If we don't, I will take down questions and I can get back to you via text, email, whatever's easiest for you all. So I'm Hannah Saunders. I am the editor and publisher of Through the Static. It is a Seattle-based anti-fascist news website. We launched on August 1st of 2025. I have been doing journalism in the field for 13 years. I was born in California. I grew up in Europe, and I've lived in the United States since 2015. I received an education from Emerson College in Boston, Bachelor of Science in Journalism, minor in Health and Society, which translates to public health. Here's some of my work history. Quite a bit. I've done freelancing full-time. I've done full-time positions like at Sound Publishing, for example, in State of Reform. That was a healthcare reporting gig. Going on, why did I leave traditional print media? A huge part of it has to do with finances. And I've seen this over the course of my career where specifically for newspapers, advertising has been consistently placed above community reporting. Most of the funding for newspapers, you get it through advertisements. If you're lucky, some publications get grants. I know South Seattle Emerald is very heavy in the grants. But a lot of it is advertisers. And what are advertisers? They're usually businesses. Who protects businesses? Cops. So what does that mean for reporting? Specifically when it comes to police reporting, accountability reporting for people in positions of power, I have been in different rooms where I'm trying to get those articles published, and I've been told no, because our advertisers aren't going to like it. We're going to lose revenue. We can't publish this. Or if we publish it, we're going to have to water it down with the language and really appease our advertisers. So that obviously has an impact on the news you receive and the way it's presented. And in terms of financial incentives, it can also look like endorsing pro-business political candidates. There was one position I had where I was in a leadership position and we were talking about campaign endorsements. And a higher up told me, we're going to have to endorse Bruce Harrell over Katie Wilson because our advertisers like Bruce. And I got sick of fighting for the community, honestly, and pushing back ever since I was as young as 22 to up to now, just pushing back against people in positions of power. And when you're younger, it's scary. And when you grow up, it's just a pain in the ass to keep having to do. Furthermore, there is a general lack of care. People in media are not treated well. Full-time, independent. Now, when I go over this, I'm going to talk more so as a freelance journalist perspective. So, one, we're constantly having to fight for community voices to be heard. Two, as it pertains to freelance reporting, myself and a bunch of other independent journalists in Seattle who I've spoken to have had this issue where they will either pitch a story and it'll be approved. This is what I'm going to cover. This is how I'm going to cover it. Or they will be sent into the field to cover an article. It is exhausting having to go to events, having to do research, interview, transcribe audio, do photos. It is a very long process, and it has happened enough to where I see a pattern of people going and doing all of that work only to be told no. I had a quick change of mind. I don't think we want to publish this. And so what happens with those independent journalists? All of their hard work, gone. You can try and pitch that story to a different outlet, but the chances of it getting picked up, slim. It's a disappointment to the community. And the reporter, they waste their time, their energy, their money, driving costs, parking costs, and they're not compensated at all. Now, this is our approach. We are fully community funded. I will never seek out advertising revenue or accept any of it because I have seen the horrors that does. These are ways you can donate, and a big part of starting through the Static is also trying to support other independents in Seattle. There are a lot of people who want to do anti-fascist news reporting. I want to be able to give them good opportunities to do so, where I'm not going to have a quick, no, you do the work, you get paid, and let's keep going, let's keep growing. And then this is kind of what we're looking at. We're still trying to reach our monthly goal of 2,500. Our donations, we're very transparent. They cover website costs, my living expenses. And then once we reach that goal, and we are getting there, once we reach that goal, this is our rates. These are rates I have accepted as an independent reporter, as a freelancer. Obviously, over time, we're going to want to increase those. So the history of journalism. First off, who here knows anything about the history of journalism? Whether it's self-education or in a classroom? A little bit?
A little bit.
Okay, what do you know?
I read this book called The Constitution of Knowledge, and it talks about like how people fact check and like maybe use a scientific method, peer review, blah, 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 how you verify, and it went into like the history of journalistic integrity standards, which is an icky word to say, but there's like at least standards are supposed to try.
Yeah, cool. Anyone else? Okay, so I will try to give a brief rundown. We're going to look at some publications. This is Public Occurrences, both foreign and domestic, also just known as Public Occurrences. It was the first published newspaper in the United States. And shortly after it launched in 1960, it was shut down by the governor of Massachusetts. The history of journalism, it goes back to Boston, Massachusetts. It was shut down because it was published without the government's permission, but in reality, they didn't like the criticism of the British. Now this, although it was shut down pretty fast, it pioneered the formation of the news industry. Next, sorry, this is kind of ickily presented, but this is the Boston Newsletter, and it was pro-British. So it was founded in 1704, and it was the first continuously published newspaper in the U.S. So it lasted until just shortly after the start of the American Revolutionary War, and its publisher and primary journalist was Bartholomew Green, and he made it pro-British from the get-go. It supported loyalist perspectives, and it was reviewed by the royal governor before hitting the printing press. So propaganda, in short. Now, as the British monarchy sought further control via oppression and other tactics, like imposing popular taxes, other publications began to rise up in resistance, one of which is the Massachusetts Spy. It was founded by Isaiah Thomas in Boston in 1770, and it was one of the most prominent resistance papers during the American Revolution. Now, for the first few years, what it did was publish essays from about 4 anonymous political writers, and it was used to speak out against political attacks, and it allowed people to come together and rally and bring their different ideas together. All right, what sticks out to you guys about this? This is a cover of the Massachusetts Spy. It was published on May 3rd of 1775. Yeah, it's a little bit more detailed. It's a little bit more eye-catching. Anyone else? Yeah.
I'd say the nine-shot release obviously push the forth message about journalists and other British people.
Yeah.
How they capitalized Oracle, the American Oracle.
Yep. Yeah. I think this is very fascinating. You don't see this in modern day journalism. Again, this was more of an activism focused publication, but you look at the top, Americans, liberty or death, you join or die. So it was really heavily promoting that sense of activism and community and resistance. And that's sort of what we at Through the Static I don't want to really say model ourselves after, but have looked to in terms of fighting this fascist regime with media, because that has been effective in the past.
There's not a pretense of this neutrality.
No. So that's very interesting. And when you look at the history of journalism, you have propaganda, you have stuff coming from the King of England, the monarchy, British rule. And then you have publications like these that are biased. And in journalism today, this is what kind of frustrates me. We'll get into it a little bit more, but in journalism today, folks are so focused on being non-biased, that we do not call out things like genocide in Palestine. We say words like conflict. What happens when we do that? We'll get more into that later. But I think in reporting, it is our responsibility. We're always told as journalists, we're watchdogs. We hold people, to accountability. And part of that is calling shit out for what it is and not pussyfooting around different language and different words. And so for me and through the static especially, we are going to call things what they are. I don't know if any of you keep up to date with our sort of news. One easy example, the Trump regime. I refuse to call it an administration. To me, it is a regime. People might not agree with that, but that's what we do. In terms of press freedoms, they are no longer a given in the States, and we've seen press freedoms deteriorate over time. According to the Committee to Protect Journalists, press freedoms in the United States falls under 3 categories: restriction of access for publications, the increased use of regulatory and governmental bodies against outlets, and targeted attacks against newsrooms and journalists. So since Trump has re-stepped into office, we have seen all of these. We have seen the White House press pool be limited. Who can come in? Not you woke reporters. We have seen that. Increased use of regulatory and governmental bodies. We've seen funding be stripped from PBS. Targeted attacks against newsrooms and journalists. We have seen houses of journalists be raided. At the Washington Post, a Black independent journalist who I recommend you all follow, Don Lemon, his home got raided too. Their technology got swiped. This is all happening, and it's not going to stop anytime soon. Now, we dig further into it. We look at the ownership. 6 mega conglomerates and several billionaires own 90% of mainstream media in the United States. Now, people, for the most part, consume mainstream media over independent or smaller publications. Most people are consuming this news that is controlled by these people. And if you look at data from 1983, that number was 50 different companies. Now it's down to 6. Almost all media this year is controlled by Comcast, Walt Disney, Warner Bros. Discover, Paramount, Skydance, Sony, and Amazon. Now there was a merger in March, Tegna and Nexstar. Boom. Now that is now one company that controls 80% of TV viewing households. So, there are different forms of media, but TV viewing, you get your media from the TV, you turn on the news channel. In Washington State, King, Kong, Krem, KSKN, which is in Spokane, they are all owned by Tegna, now Nexstar. What is the impact of this conglomeration and just the small ownership pool in general? According to the Committee to Protect Journalists, guys, I'm sorry, I'm going to read a bunch of words, but it's censorship pressures. So when a company dominates the airwaves, if it chooses to censor or skew the news or other content, its manipulations will reach much broader audiences. Nexstar, for instance, blocked its affiliates from broadcasting the Jimmy Kimmel Late Night ABC television show following criticism from the Trump administration. Now, news quality also deteriorates. Where media consolidation occurs, cost cuts and shortcuts often follow. Local news is substituted for news duplication across multiple stations and staff reductions. This, combined with the growth of so-called news deserts across the U.S., as well as recent federal defunding of public broadcasting, has made it increasingly difficult for Americans across the country to access a plurality of local fact-based news sources. As local news sources and journalism jobs shrink, coverage skews to serve one political party or agenda, and consumers pay more but get less information. Brief rundown of demographics. Journalism, especially in the United States, it has always been white, cis male dominated. Gender gaps, you look at it from maybe a decade ago, 60% men, 35% women. That has been closing over time, but it's still pretty bad, guys. This is a graph from 2016 and 2017 by the American Press Institute, and it shows the average percentage of journalists of color in newsrooms across different circulation sizes, from small local papers to large national publications. So in this far left column, that is the circulation size. It goes from 500K plus down to under 5K and then online only. And you can see slight increases in general over 1 year, but it's still very minimum. The highest number on that screen, 23.65%. All right, anyone want to answer this question? What have you?
It spreads propaganda.
Exactly. Anyone else? Yes.
And then the former fascist dictatorships, they newsrooms, they were considered received by the ruling party, especially in Germany. Almost all of them were nationalized.
Yep. Okay.
It polarizes our population.
It does.
Audiences.
Yeah. Yeah, I think journalism, it can create stark division or bring people together. I definitely think they're right, create stark division. So one of the most top of mind examples for me, and something we should always look at, is the genocide in Palestine. Unconfirmed IOF reports on October 7th, like babies being beheaded and raped, were regurgitated by mainstream media all across the globe. BBC, CNN, even Associated Press, which is the golden standard of journalism. These were later discredited, but what was the impact of that? What unfolded after these allegations spewing what the IOF said without fact checking? What impact did that have on Palestinians?
They were painted as monsters instead of victims.
Yep, and it gave the IOF and the US more of a reason to go and commit what they are currently doing and have not stopped doing for almost 3 years. Meanwhile, armed Palestinian resistance, it is always painted as terrorism, while the IOF atrocities that are being committed, they're labeled as defensive and justifiable. Misleading terminology like continuing to refer to a genocide as a war, it removes accountability. So as journalists, that's pretty weird because we're focused on holding people accountable. And so to see a bunch of mainstream media news outlets do that, oh, sorry about the spelling error. It's disappointing, and I do believe that these outlets are complicit in the genocide. You don't have to agree with me though. Okay, we're gonna look into headlines, passive versus active voice. I love this one. So headlines, they are what grab the attention of readers. One of the most important parts of reporting, one of the hardest parts of writing. I have, over a decade of experience. The headline, oh my God, it gets my head in the gutter. It's hard. But look out for passive voice, because that removes accountability from perpetrators. These are some examples of passive voice. I pulled this one, they are both recent articles published within the last week. I pulled this one to the right from The Guardian. And so the headline reads, Gaza hospitals running out of supplies as Israeli airstrikes continue, medics say. An active voice alternative is ongoing Israeli airstrikes force Gaza hospitals into severe supply shortage. So Gaza hospitals are not just over here running out of medical supplies while Israel does its airstrikes. The medical supply shortages are a direct result of the airstrikes. And that's
Also the blockade.
Yeah. So for this one, we have got This is a New York publication. I personally don't know much about them. I just pulled this, but it says, for the headline, man detained by ICE after judge restricts arrest was released. Can anyone reform that into an active voice headline for me?
Man kidnapped by ICE.
That's still pretty passive. Who's doing the kidnapping?
ICE detains man after judge restricts arrests was released. That's kind of a word salad.
It's a word salad. But in general, you always want to put, at least, especially as it relates to just fascist groups in general, like ICE, put them at the front. Let people know they are the ones who are doing this. They are the ones who are arresting. And other stuff, God. All right, active voice. I love my PBS. Israeli strikes kill at least 54 in southern Gaza hospital sits. What would a passive voice headline alternative look like?
54 killed in southern Gaza.
Exactly. And we see that pretty much every day in the media. Here's another one. ICE agents detain man at New York City immigration hearing one day after judge bans court arrests. It's more direct, and it holds them, it gives them the responsibility, I guess. That's not the right word. But digging into news stories. Okay, first off, I want to know, where do you guys get your news from? How do you consume media? Is it print, radio, podcasts, TV?
I get it from you, Dad.
Okay, son. Where else? Al Jazeera. And anxiety. Yes.
Pretty much all the things you mentioned.
Okay. All right. So I always encourage the more the merrier. That doesn't mean you need to read like 6 articles from 4 different publications a day. That means if you're doing dishes, throw on a podcast. Just have something in the background going in your ear. This news cycle is so rapid, it's hard to keep up. It's hard for me to keep up. I get overwhelmed. And that's one of the easiest things to do, consuming a bunch of media from a bunch of different kinds of media. Print, podcasts, those are my go-to. Okay. So when you're looking at different stories and you're trying to find out what's going on, here are some things you're going to want to look towards. Check multiple outlets. If you're reading a piece and you're not sure about a fact, look up a similar news story from a different outlet. Is the information the same? That's a positive sign if it is. This also, by doing so, helps you familiarize yourself with different ways that new outlets publish the news and present the news, if they have a slant, if any. Now, attribution to sources is huge. Is this information just presented and popped out there? Or is it backed up by sources like experts, community members, different leaders, research papers? Those are sources too. It should always be in text. If you're looking at an article, usually through the staff we use according to or X said. Another way to do so to be less wordy is just hyperlink the source. So if you're, talking about info, facts from a research paper, you can just hyperlink it. But if it's just presented without any sources, that is more of an opinion, I would say. And that's not a trustworthy place to go and get information. Also, reporter portfolio. Yes, who is writing this? Is it a beat reporter at a publication, or is it just a former politician, an opinion writer? We're seeing more one-offs in terms of people who aren't journalists who are publishing. People think, oh my God, this is a great journalism piece, and then, oh, here's the background of this person. They actually have this motive. They want to present this news because they are a businessman, for example. Okay, yeah. Publications and outlets. So the best source of information in your area will be at the hyperlocal level. When you look at national news stories, they pick up news from the hyperlocal journalists, and then it explodes nationally. That's what we saw with Juniper Blessing, the woman who was murdered at UW. A lot of us, we, the Burner, Through the Static, the Seattle Day News, The Stranger, we were all reporting on it, UW Daily. It gets picked up by Them Magazine. It gets picked up by all sorts of outlets. And it shows us that we're doing a good job at the local level. But there are so many more pieces of news and information at the local level that don't reach national headlines. There are so many important stories that are going untold. And so local outlets, they have the community relationships. They have the trust. But the larger ones, they have so much money and so many more resources. One thing we have been struggling with at Through the Static is actually getting people to respond to us. We can get the mayor, we can get some council members, but people just, especially for smaller publications or any publication that has like the word blog in its name, you're treated as a joke. So it is very beneficial sometimes when these larger outlets come in and they're able to get comments from SPD when SPD doesn't fucking talk to anyone. And that is some of what we saw with Juniper Blessing. But when you were looking at national, are you raising your hand?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it seems to me like in recent times we see more usage of like subliminal journalism via social media, YouTube, right? Like it's not necessarily, it's a trusted news source, but if you create the site where there's enough elements that, or enough promotion to say you need like news source, and then in between, we say project reels that, influence, right? And these becoming more effective means of reaching that population. Like, at least in what I've seen in my communities, like the influence that it works on people's opinions and how it's made these actions create. These aren't folks that are reading newspapers or following any article of any substantial related to politics. No, they don't have time. We've already been switched in the direction of big research and via those people. And to me, it seems like that's it's become a very big tactic by media, and we see these murders on giant, whenever I talk about that stuff, you notice that I often will touch anyway, I just wanted to drop this.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. I immediately see even started, it's changed so much. Huge focus on social media. Hey guys, we've got a presentation. No, that's okay, grab what you need, but yeah. But yes, when you're looking at national news stories, I always encourage you to dig out smaller publications that are in the area and get your news directly from them. Let's say something blows up on Reuters in New York. Go and find a couple of, if you can, independent publications in New York and get your news that way. And you can also compare it to what Reuters has, for example. Okay, let's see, okay, so there are different resources you can find in terms of outlets where they fall on the bias scale, if that's something that interests you. I'm sorry, it's kind of hard to read, but this is a very great graphic. Yeah, and there are also a few other websites where you can just type in the publication's name and it's, oh, this is more left leaning because of this reason, or it's more right leaning. Okay. Who to watch locally? Hold on, let me see. Okay, so these are the people and publications I recommend to watch locally. We've got Divest, they do great SPD accountability reporting. We've got Zoned Out, Pacific Northwest. Right now, they're just an Instagram page, from my knowledge, that they are growing. I am waiting to subscribe to their newsletter. Publicola, that is another reader-supported publication in Seattle. They cover Seattle city news and a lot of homelessness. Capitol Hill Seattle blog, Everything you need to know about what's going on in this neighborhood is going to be on the blog. Converge Media, they're filling a gap. One, we don't have enough Black voices in media, in any form of media. So they are filling that gap through videos, podcasts, articles. They're doing Seattle coverage, primarily in the CD, South Seattle, and they're having a focus on culture. Please go and subscribe to them if you haven't already. Burner's great. Krieg does protest coverage, and she's got brief but many updates that are very beneficial. And then I think we all need some satirical news. Love the needling. Local reporters to be on the lookout for as well. Gustavo from KUOW, he covers immigration, race, and gender. I have been super impressed with his reporting. Come to find out, we have similar sources who are doing some of the hardest work in the community as it relates to immigration. Sharon Yu at King 5. She is King 5's facing race reporter. She does a lot of immigration coverage. I was like, who is this woman popping up on my Instagram page all the time? I really respect the way she covers issues. King 5 does have the resources. Generally, they fall in the middle of the bias spectrum. But yeah, when I look at coverage at King 5, I go to Sharon. And she has, when she reports, you can tell that she is really passionate and she actually has that care about communities. She's not just pushing stuff out and then moving on. And that's what I appreciate about both of these reporters. Who to watch nationally or internationally? We've got the AP, one of the most credible, unbiased outlets globally. They slip up too. We've seen them slip up in the past 3 years with Palestine coverage. Reuters is also up there with the AP, most reliable, unbiased outlets globally, one of them. Other ones I recommend, Courier Newsroom. It's an independent publication. It's got newsrooms in about 20 states. It is advocacy driven. Mint Press. I know we've got a lot of Al Jazeera readers in here, but Mint Press is really great. They are far left, watchdog, and investigative journalism. They have been doing a lot to hold Israeli military members to account. Pardon me, guys. Jacobin is another one that doesn't get as much recognition as it should, in my opinion. It is an American leftist paper, focuses on politics, economics, culture. And then Reveal, I frickin' love Reveal. Al Ludson is the host. My favorite podcast. My favorite news podcast. He talks a lot about racial and social justice issues and accountability. So if you're doing dishes, put Reveal on, seriously. Okay, I kind of gave up on the structure of the slide, guys, but here are some tips. I love Snopes. Who knows about Snopes? Who's heard of it? Yeah. So Snopes is a go-to fact-checking website for me. Sometimes news will go viral and you can't find any credible source of information. Outlets either are not covering it or all of the information they have is different. Go to Snopes. Snopes usually cracks into it and gives you the breakdown. Also, in general, subscribe to outlets, even if you don't really read your email or check it. If something pops in, you could see a headline in about, say, 25 words from the start of an article. If that pegs your interest, just go and click on it. But it is the easiest way to stay up to date with news, but also go and subscribe to your city newsletter to get city updates, to nonprofit newsletters, to community action group newsletters. I know SAW has one, Seattle Against War. Okay. And then, guys, take regular news and social media breaks. It's easy to spin out, rabbit hole, think, oh, fuck, we are in the worst of the worst with this fascist takeover. Please, even if it's forced, for 2 days, take a break. That is so important for everyone's mental health. I don't follow my own advice. I seriously can't step away. We need people to step away. And it is so important to be up to date, but your mental health always comes first. Okay. Boop. Who has questions? Thoughts?
I have a thought that might turn into a question. So on that Ad Fontes media bias chart,
Yeah, let's go
that's
back.
that's been around for a long time.
Right.
It's always been shaped like that parabola, right? So it's like anytime you go too far left or too far right, meaning it goes down, right? So it's like they're implicitly saying if you go far enough left, you can't be accurate. The up down is the factual basis, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like they're saying their qualification for being accurate also means you have to be centrist.
It
And
does.
that's always pissed me off.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And, you know, again, there are other websites that do the same thing and they have different methodologies. But if you're just trying, and especially for like mainstream media, I think this is helpful if you're looking like
Sure.
CNN, just the bigger outlets. But you're 100% right. I can't even. Yeah. Yeah, so at the bottom here, it says selective, incomplete, unfair persuasion or other issues. And then here's some news outlets down there. Yeah. So it really depends on like who's fucking going through and
Yeah.
like determining that. But I do recommend it, especially for bigger outlets.
Sure.
You're not going to find us on there. They wouldn't allow us on that chart at all, but yeah, it is helpful. I didn't realize they had placed, let's see, like they have Midas Touch network over there. It's opinion or wide variation in reliability. Midas Touch is pretty decent too. But yeah, even you see the Black Agenda report. It's incomplete. It's unfair.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Can you talk a little bit about why is it so hard to cover systems level issues in journalism, the tendency to kind of narrow things down to individual stories? For example, homelessness. Why are people homeless? The way it gets covered is that because of individual stories or individual choices that people make. Often because those are easier stories to tell. It's a lot harder to tell a story about all of the different things at systems level that are causing people to be homeless. It's harder to tell a compelling narrative about that for sure. Can you say a little bit more about what are just some of the challenges around telling those bigger stories?
Yeah. You're 100% right. And it depends. When you have that narrative story, you go and you interview someone, here's their experience with being unhoused. You can either use that to humanize or demonize folks. And we've seen some publications in this city demonize people for being homeless. It's ridiculous. And I think when you get into the weeds of it, I mean, reporters are on deadlines, usually an article a day, get it out, fast turnaround. And also, I think like Seattle Times is at the top of my mind for their coverage right now. But I think editorial, who's running that editorial department, that has a lot to do with it. Is it an older white privileged male who has a privileged life pretty much and little trauma from, yeah, I think that has a huge part to play. And I also think we have just gotten so bad in the US about even trying to hold people accountable in general, the system's accountable. And it is more time consuming. It does involve a lot more resources. A lot of publications can't take that on, especially smaller publications, but even the bigger ones, I feel like it's just, fuck it. We don't care. Again, look at the Seattle Times, the way they cover homelessness. Who reads Seattle Times?
What does it matter anyway?
What do you mean?
What I mean by that is that the article on homelessness, who's it really speaking to? And you kind of said it a little bit yourself. It's the middle, white class, white middle class privilege.
Mm-hmm.
You look at individual stories, like I was pushed into homelessness. Like I wasn't like, I don't mean like, oh, well, this didn't go that way. No, like I was literally watched, my behavior paid attention to, led down the path, which when they could hit, they hit, take my van out of the school. And I can give very big details, etc., but that's not the point. The point is, what I see the folks around me, where they get their information, which influences behavior within that community, right? That information is not coming from any news source.
Mhm.
You're not looking at the paper, oh, look what I read today. I noticed in the propaganda posters for the left in recent times, like when I first came to Northwest, I felt it was so politically active. You'd see a flyer go up, WTO was happening. Flyers were informative. They told me about what was going on. Not only did it say this WTO, it told me what WTO was and what IMF were and what. But now all I see is fuck ICE.
Yeah.
Fuck Trump. Oh, what was the other one? Another one that that's like related to people with money. Fuck people with money.
Yeah, eat the rich, for
Those
example.
people when they're doing something good. Like it's not like money's a symptom of our construct of society. So like, what if you're taking the money and you're doing really good things with it? Then I don't want to punish the rich for taking money and doing something good with it. So we're supposed to like fuck the rich? No, fuck the rich that are this, right? So anyway, what I know is in our communities, I mean, YouTube is the source of news.
Yeah.
And that's why I brought it up, is like, when I got to witness one day on a bus, the end result of meals and counseling, mind blown when a guy falls asleep and his phone falls to the side and I'm watching is, oh, here's a reel about a cop in a yellow shirt giving this guy a ticket. Beating. Here's one with the neighbor in a yellow shirt, and he's gonna develop the whole neighborhood is fucking the neighbor. Here's another guy in a yellow shirt, what do these have in common? Well, the bus driver has a yellow shirt, and started paying closer attention. And I saw folks who were actually part of like feeding the newsroom. Well, by the end of that bus ride, this like recovering alcoholic, all I could think about was stopping the video. Isn't that something? I was out, so this is where the news is coming. And like the news that you're talking about, like you help get positions in journalism, like actually office positions that are merit. These are news faculties, right? These are news outlets. Like this is specifically in the news. Our communities, our news is coming from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And this should be a good thing, right? Like I grew up, the revolution was not televised. Like this sounded great in theory. But now I'm seeing, oh, it's so great. Like the bad news comes both ways. For every 100 of them, there's one being, or one you, or everybody wants to, it'll come out better, I'm sure, but
Yeah.
it's ugly now, man. Like, I deal with the Wii controller in my animals. Go figure. My day is made difficult by somebody with a Game Boy. It's unbelievable. That's why I wanted to attend when I heard it was headline because I apologize on behalf of people in my homeless community that come in and do that.
Oh,
That was
that's
just disrespectful. I'm sorry, that was disrespectful. And I want to say this, I've seen this a lot with some of our leftist organizations in India. It's okay to have boundaries. You're not being cool to homeless people if you say, excuse me, we're having a lecture. That's not cool to homeless. Life is boundaries. It has to happen. Your ego boundaries. And I think that's what you're talking about with media. Propaganda needs those boundaries. Because that's all propaganda, positive and negative.
Yeah.
And it depends on who's taking it in, right? But I saw this in Olympia too. Without the boundaries, the efforts and the mission efforts are getting lost. So like we have the outreach groups, right? They're railroaded by malfeasance and nonsense from what appears to be people dressed like me. It's very sad, very frustrating. It shows that I think that as I was growing up, there was this sense of like, you're a child, you go to school, you get shaped, you get a college education, now you can go, now you work outside. And there you go, now you move on, you go to, you understand the economy, spending, it's time to go deal with that whole kids playing against that player shifted obviously. We have people who should go to have to maintain our own youth, if not.
Yeah. One thing I want to say about that, you had mentioned, you had brought up like YouTube. One thing I have noticed for journalism in general, to reach audiences, we are seeing a bigger push in social media, all platforms, including YouTube. I didn't realize it was such a big place to get information for folks. But one thing I want you all to be on the lookout for, there's a difference between journalists and political commentators. We are seeing far more political commentators who, some of which like to label themselves as journalists with no training, no sense of ethics, and not really understanding what their voice or their platform, the impact it has. So be on the lookout for that. I encourage you to do your research into different people, from who you get your news from. Always, that's most who is delivering this.
Speaking of, we do have a comment in the chat that says, how do we determine if an independent reporter is accurate and or unbiased, especially on Instagram? Sometimes I'll see an outlet like a burner report on something, but I can't verify it since I don't see it reported anywhere else.
So if the burner, for example, if they drop news and you can't find it anywhere else, I'd say do. It may be a break in the news story, or I don't know. We have our own biases. I know for me at Food Stat, I swear like a sailor, I'm very passionate, especially when I talk about police and the violence they inflict on our communities. We are slanted at Food Stat. We are human rights. We are empaths. Everybody deserves to have their basic needs met. We deserve to live happy and fulfilling lives, every single one of us. Some would be like, shit, that's super duper biased. Shame on you. I don't care. We acknowledge it. In general, you're just gonna have to be on the lookout. Are they presenting facts, or is it, opinion? Have you guys ever read like blogs? Yeah, not capital C blog, but like here's one person presenting news on a blog. The kind of reporting, you can tell it's opinionated more so than a news story at, say, a print publication. So you're just gonna have to kind of look at that and kind of determine that for yourselves. I always encourage, go to the websites, dude. I know with Hannah Creed, she does some really good reporting, but I have read her work and I have seen, yes, this is, me inserting my personal opinion, and that's fine. Just know, it's for you to determine, though. If you like that news, go get your news from there. And again, I think with the meeting, if I can't find this information, I'll serve it for you to see what pops up. If not, just reach out to her or them, or anyone. And then just reach out to them, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, I'm having issues controlling this. Sorry, I hope that answers the question. Anyone else?
I just wanted to thank you for doing it. When I woke up out there, after dealing with another bunch of nonsense, I was curious what was going on and happy with this what I appreciate how much snacks I'm honestly starving and with my friends and done everything I can to make sure I don't have water and food, and that's the latest one. But that's not why I'm fascinated by it because I just take it along. I know how important it is now more than ever. Because I watched it change our whole population. Is really information and what we now accept as media and news. More of this kind of lecture out there, and you dig deeper. It's so easy. I've been a musician my whole life, and as we got better and on better stages, we became separated from those bottom stages, those trenches. And that didn't make us better musicians by any means. Which is alienated our audiences. So,
Thank you for telling me that, Rafa.
Yeah, we gotta head out here. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
If you have any questions, just static.org or be on social media. Inbox is going to be the best way to reach me. But yeah, so if there are any questions or like afterthoughts or feedback, like yeah, just reach out. Let me know.
We're having.
Yeah, is that was that okay?
Yeah, that's great. It's great. It's fantastic. Picture.
Oh, thank you.
Stop the stream.
Yeah.